Good morning. I'm Robert Summacrass, Dean of the Terry College of Business at the University of Georgia. I want to welcome everyone to our Terry Third Thursday speaker series. If this is the first time you're coming to a Terry Third Thursday event, or really any Terry event here in Atlanta, then this might be the first time that you're here in this building, our Terry Executive Education Center. And so I want to welcome you to that as well. It's been a really good way for us to reach out to the business community and the alumni here in the Atlanta area. Terry Third Thursday, like so many of our events, wouldn't be possible without the volunteers that we have to help put this together, and it certainly wouldn't be possible without the generous support that we have from partners and sponsors. Today's premier corporate sponsor for Terry Third Thursday is the Bank of North Georgia. Do we have some representatives from Bank of North Georgia with us today? Over there. Thank you very much. We're also sponsored by Deloitte, and Deloitte usually sends some people. Do we have Deloitte people with us today? Yes, thank you. We're also supported by two of our media sponsors, Public Broadcasting of Atlanta and the Atlanta Business Chronicle, and we appreciate their support as well. I'm pleased to announce that this year we have a new group of sponsors. We call them the Terry Third Thursday Partners for 2008-2009. They include SunTrust and Trustco Capital Management, AT&T, Bennett Thrasher, Bibb Distributing Company, Georgia Power, Georgia Crown Distributing Company, Stateside Capital, as well as an anonymous sponsor. So please join me in thanking all of our sponsors and partners for helping us put together this monthly speaker series. Now, before we get started with today's program, let's look out a little bit to the future. We're always trying to line up some interesting speakers for you with Terry Third Thursday. In August, on the 21st, we've got Sonny Seiler coming. And with the recent coverage of August 6 in the news, I don't think I have to introduce Sonny to any of you, certainly the owner of the Georgia Mascots. But I think if you come to our next month's speaker series, you'll have a lot of good questions for him. Now, many of you know that Sonny is a lawyer, so I'm not sure what kind of secrets we'll be able to pry out from him about the future, but you can certainly try. In September 18th, Louise Allen will be our guest. She is president of Ivan Allen Workspace, and she'll be discussing the challenges and privileges of running a fourth-generation family business. In October, on the 16th, our friend Jim Nally will be with us. I think everyone knows Jim from the Nally nameplate on the car dealerships that are all around the metro Atlanta area. Jim now serves as the non-executive chairman of Nally Automotive Group. Remember that you can register for any of our Terry Third Thursday speaker series on our website, or just pull aside one of the Terry staff here and we'll try and get you started with that. That brings us to today's speaker, Ken Jackson. It gives me great pleasure to introduce a graduate of the Terry College. Ken Jackson is the Chief Financial Officer of Shaw Industries Incorporated, one of the world's largest carpet manufacturers, as well as one of the largest manufacturing employers within the state of Georgia. Shaw Industries is headquartered in Dalton. It was publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange until January of 2001, when it was acquired by Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway. Ken joined Shaw Industries in his current capacity in 1996, but Shaw had been a client of Ken's while he was at Arthur Andersen. Ken started out at the Atlanta office of Andersen in their tax division after graduating from Terry. He was promoted to partner in 1990 and served as the firm's accounting methods and tax specialty team. He also served 2 years on the Chairman's Advisory Council and led the firm's recruiting efforts, at UGA. Thank you for that, Ken. Ken has 2 degrees from Terry. His bachelor's degree is in accounting from 1979, and he got a master's degree in taxation the following year. His professional service outside of Shaw includes being a member of the Conference Board's Council of CFOs and serving on the advisory board of FM Global. He also gives back to UGA in a number of important ways. Two of the most important would be serving on our Tull School Accounting Advisory Board and on the Board of Trustees of the UGA Foundation. Ken has some ideas to share on a topic that we wish wasn't so relevant and so interesting today. That is managing successfully through an economic downturn. Please welcome Ken Jackson to our Terry Third Thursday speaker series. Ken, come on up. Thanks, Ken.
All right, thank you. I don't know if I'm wired up or not. I guess I am. Here we go. Interesting story how I got to Shaw Industries. I'll never forget that day. It was in November of 1995, and the existing CFO was Bill Lusk, and he was close to retirement. They had offered the job already to Steve Rogers, who some of you probably know. Steve was the managing partner for the Atlanta office, and Steve didn't want to move to Dalton, Georgia. Now, he felt like that was a pretty wide ocean to cross between Atlanta and Dalton, and I can tell you it is a wide ocean. But Bob called me up, and I'll never forget that day. I hung up the phone, and I thought, damn, I wish he wouldn't have called, because now I know I'm going to have to go look at this opportunity, because I loved working at Arthur Andersen, though my timing was probably pretty good. I went up and talked to Bob Shaw. I called him Bob then. Later in life learned that his real name was Mr. Shaw. And so I went up and talked to him, and he offered me the job. And I said, now, Bob, I'm going to take this job. But I said, just so we're clear and you remember, I'm your tax partner, right? He said, I know that. He said, I'd rather bet on people I know than what I might find on a resume. And I tell you, the most important thing he said to me at that point in time, he said, you'll be fine, just try to be curious about what it is that we do at Shaw Industries. And so with that, I don't know how many people, I'd just like to see a show of hands, how many people have heard of Shaw Industries before? Only because you saw that I was the speaker and that I worked there? You know, carpeting and flooring, unfortunately, is not something people shop for every week. But I think what's important is I do want to give you a little bit of background of Shaw Industries so you're familiar with the company. And then I'll get into some of the practices that we're deploying now. And I would really like to change the title of the speech to just managing through an economic downturn. Successfully seems to be a little presumptuous on my part. But as the Dean mentioned, Shaw Industries first went public in 1971, but it really started in the early 60s as a dye house. Back in the day, carpet was just becoming in vogue. It found its way up into the northwest Georgia area right after World War II. DuPont was the company that invented nylon type 6.6, and they used it in the Army in World War II in parachutes, tire cords, uniforms, because it was a very light, well-performing fiber system. And when the war ended, they needed a place to put all of that. Dalton, Georgia, and that whole Chattanooga area is not a good farming area. The land is not like it is in South Georgia. It's very rocky, and so you had a bedspread community that had grown up there called, and some people might know what a chenille bedspread is. But that's what people were doing up in that area. Well, about that time when the war was ending, wow. Did y'all arrange that just for me? Thank you. There was an invention of a tufting machine, and I can tell you a tufting machine, think about it as though it's nothing but a huge sewing machine, 12 feet wide, filled with needles, through which you thread the yarn and you tuft it into a primary back. You cut off the tops or you leave them in loop form, you dye it, and then you attach it to its secondary backing, and there you go. So today in northwest Georgia, between Shaw Industries, Mohawk Industries, Beaulieu, and Dixie, you have 85% of the carpet that's manufactured in the entire world in that area. So the company had humble beginnings. Bob Shaw will tell you that he had $50,000 borrowed from the C&S Bank when he started that company back in the early 60s. So it went public in 1971 and went on the New York Stock Exchange in 1981. The 80s was the kind of go-go period for the carpet industry. There was 200 carpet mills at least at that time. Today, as I just mentioned, the top 4 have 85% of the production really in the world. So that was a period characterized by a lot of consolidation. The business used to go through distributors, just like hard surface does primarily today. The manufacturers of hard surface materials typically sell to a distributor who then sells to a retailer. Carpet was that way also, until Shaw Industries, in a pretty bold move. I mean, I'll get to a couple of moves that we call Russian history. In Russia, if it was bad, they just don't record it. We've got some of that too. But in the 80s, Shaw Industries created their own direct sales force and went direct to retailers. Now that is a bold move, because remember, that means you're effectively competing with your existing customer base, the distributor. So, but today we have over 2,000 salespeople. We sell every product we sell direct to a retailer. We built a massive distribution network, and we have in the top 10 largest private fleets of trucking of all companies in the United States. So, and the service model for flooring is just a wonderful service model from my perspective, in that all of the inventories in carpet are maintained by the manufacturers. There's really no downstream inventory. Most people, when they go to buy carpet or flooring, they go into a retail store and they're buying off of a sample. If you've ever done it, and our consumer is the female consumer. She'll go in, she's got her paint chip, she's got her piece of fabric, she's trying to match up with what she's going to do carpet-wise or whatever flooring. She'll find the style that she wants, and she'll identify what the color. Actually, she starts with color first. Then she moves to what type of carpet, and then what budget can fit around that. But she'll select it off of a piece this big, oftentimes. And that dealer will then order that from us, and it's typically depends on how much she's buying. But if she's buying a couple of bedrooms, we're going to ship a 12-foot wide by 40 feet long piece of carpet in about a day and a half. And that's wonderful for our business, because if you think about it, that's a tough service model to attack. You can't really reach into that business very easily. And so, to that extent, part of what we believe is kind of a major moat around our business, and I'll talk about that, is the way the distribution system works forms part of the moat that we call the moat around Shaw Industries. But in the 80s, the distribution system was being built. We were going direct. A lot of acquisitions. We acquired Cabin Crafts from West Point Pepperell. We acquired Armstrong's Carpet Division. We acquired Salem Carpet Mills during that period of time. And so that takes us kind of the early 90s, and we got into backward integration in a huge way when we bought Amoco's polypropylene extrusion business. So that put us, one thing you probably need to understand about the carpet industry, and we'll talk about it, is that we start literally just right after Chevron has refined that gasoline from petroleum. We basically are that far backward integrated, which puts you in a low-cost position, but also puts you in a position where when you see the kind of things that have happened with oil prices and other intermediates today in the chemical business, it puts you right in the crosshairs of some pretty high escalating costs. But we went into the backward integration business principally in polypropylene, and people remember Berbers, those loop pile Berbers. That's principally what that fiber system supported, which was loop pile carpet as opposed to cut pile or cut loop pattern carpet that many people utilize today. Well, about the time Bob Shaw was talking to me, he told me we were going into the retail business. That did not mean a thing to me at that time. I really didn't know what it meant. He did say one other thing. He said our stock is going to be either at 5 or 50. And he was right. It was closer to 5 when we got done. Because and his idea was this: carpet was widely distributed, didn't feel like it was being all that well represented on a retail floor. Everybody was selling it off of sample boards in the back of gasoline stations, and he felt like we needed to improve the image of the product to the consumer. Because for years and years, as things, time has moved on, carpet's losing share. There's no question. It's still the biggest piece of the flooring industry by far and away. Carpet and rugs are $15 billion in an industry that total industry is about $23 billion. That leaves $8 billion for ceramic tile, hardwood, laminate, vinyl, and some other types of flooring material. So carpet and rugs still comprise the biggest piece, but if you looked at the growth rates and you looked at its share of that flooring industry over time, it has clearly been losing share to these other hard surfaces. As people have become more affluent, as people desire to have what they consider to be maybe a more natural product, hardwood has really been the one that's been, as you know, if you go back and think through, and some of the people who've bought and sold a number of houses can recall, hardwood used to be in the foyer, and then everything else was carpet and a lot of vinyl in kitchens. Today, almost the whole first floor is some type of hard surface, and in this part of the world, it's usually hardwood. And then you get up into the upstairs bedrooms, and they are fortunately still today in most cases carpet. So it's clearly had some challenges from that standpoint. But we got into the retail business, and you want to talk about competing with your customers. We were viewed as competing directly with our customers, and we were opening up retail stores. Our competitors were quick to point out to those other customers. Our philosophy was we don't need to go to every market. If we have a good dealer, we have our market share in Cincinnati, and we're happy with our position there, we're not going to Cincinnati. Now, those that we compete with would tell that good customer of Shaw in Cincinnati, why in the world would you support Shaw Industries? They're in the retail business. They're your competitor. They may not be here now, but they're coming. And that sold pretty well in Cincinnati. And what we learned was that being in the retail business, although we had gotten it to a point where it was reasonably profitable, we couldn't run our equipment given the fact that we were losing unit market share. And one of the things I have learned in 13 years at Shaw Industries is that running that equipment is really, really, really important in your cost structure. So in 1998, Bob made the decision that we were going to exit the retail business, and that was a happy day for a lot of people at Shaw Industries because we got out of that business, and then we immediately bought, at the time, the fourth largest carpet company in Dalton, in that whole area, which was Queen Carpet Mills. And so that kind of takes you up to where we were at the time we meet Warren Buffett. Now, Warren Buffett's another interesting story. That was a meeting that took place. This is well documented. You can read about it in the proxy materials, where Bob had gone with Julian Saul, who was the CEO of Queen, and George Lorch, who was the chief executive of Armstrong, because we were looking at acquiring Armstrong. But Armstrong had a little problem. They had an asbestos problem. And so they went out to see Warren, and as y'all know, as you may know, Warren's principal business is insurance. He owns a lot of different companies, and he loves to talk about Coca-Cola and Dairy Queen. But his primary business is the insurance business. He owns Geico. Berkshire Hathaway's got a big reinsurance unit, General Re. So anyway, they were out there talking to Warren, and Warren said, yes, we'd write a policy, but he said, we're going to have a cap on it. He said, we won't go, exposed over and above. He said, juries don't know anything about what it means to add zeros. So he looked at Bob, and he looked at Julian. He said, we'll do it. It's going to have a cap. You need to decide whether you're willing to bet the farm on this deal. So with that, they departed, quickly realized they weren't ready to bet the farm, and so that's the initial meeting that Bob and Julian really had with Warren Buffett. But on the way out the door, I think Warren asked Bob, would he mind if he became a shareholder of Shaw Industries? And Bob said, no, we'd be flattered. We'd love to have you be a stockholder of Shaw Industries. He used to beat me up and Julius Shaw, his nephew, because we were the ones always going with these investor presentations. He used to always tell us we were calling on the wrong people. We were calling the people that once you were up 25%, they were going to sell your stock. And he said, you need to go find stakeholders like Warren Buffett. So anyway, they came back from that meeting and a couple of more meetings after that, and lo and behold, here comes an offer from Warren Buffett to acquire our company, and that happened in 2001. And then bringing you all the way up to date, since that time, we've made several acquisitions in the carpet business, and we've recently made 2 in the hardwood flooring business. We bought a company in Clinton, South Carolina, and we bought one up in Franklin, North Carolina. We also have gone major in terms of backward integration. We acquired Synthetic Industries, which makes all of the backing that we use. So we're fully integrated in our own backing systems, and we also bought Honeywell's, it used to be Allied Signal, but we bought Honeywell's caprolactam manufacturing facilities, caprolactam being the chemical that you make nylon from, in Columbia, South Carolina, Anderson, and Clemson, South Carolina. So we've got a big, big, big footprint. That was just the first card, and I'm going to pick it up from here. Give you an idea, in 2006, our company peaked in sales at $5.6 billion. This year, it's hard to say where we'll end, but probably closer to $5 billion. The industry, this is an interesting point. 2006, Shaw Industries sold 710 million square yards of carpet. I always like to ask our trainees, what does that mean? Square yards of carpet, 710 million. Here's how you do it. Most carpet is tufted 12 feet wide. So if you went a linear yard, 3 feet, you'd be 3 feet long by 12 feet wide, which is 36. Divide that by 9, and you get 4 square yards for 3 linear feet. So you can figure out, if we were selling 710 million square yards, how many linear feet that would be. But I'll do the math for you. Basically, here's the way to think about it. If you started at the equator and you were using all 12-foot wide carpet, you could loop the globe 4 times, and that's how much carpet we sell in a year. Now that's big. That's a lot. I know that's probably shocking to you, but that's a lot of carpet. Now, the industry, from its peak year, is probably going to find itself down somewhere close to 23 to 24% based on what's happened in the economy. And as I've already mentioned, when you're as backward integrated as we all are, and this is really not unique to Shaw Industries, our competitors have followed right with those same moves because cost is important. And so you can't really allow someone to have a different cost position than you do and compete. And so our major competitors have done essentially the same thing we've done as far as backward integration. I want to tell you a brief story about our first meeting with Warren Buffett because it speaks volumes to how we manage our business. Bob Shaw was different than the new management team. I've been at Shaw now as for 13 years, and as we said, I spent my whole career at Arthur Andersen working on it, so I counted as 28. Our other senior management, Vance Bell's been there over 35 years, and the president of the company, Randy Merritt's been there over 30 years, and Hal Long, who runs all of our operations, has been there for 35 years. And they're all, in their mid to early 50s. Bob would call up Warren and say, Warren, we're going to go do this. We don't have time to educate you about it. If you don't think it's a good idea when you're done, then you can fire us all. And we used to always go, why did you say something like that to him? Warren's smart enough to figure it out. But anyway, we went out and met with Warren in September because Bob retired in August of '06. And we went out and talked to Warren. We made this big presentation. We had this beautiful book, and it kind of broke the entire flooring industry down. What was Shaw Industries' position in each category? What were our strengths? What were our weaknesses? What are our opportunities? And so on and so forth. And we go out there, and we knew that was something brand new for Warren. because Bob would send him one piece of paper occasionally. And Warren isn't, as they say, I'm telling you, if we didn't call Warren, we'd probably never hear from him. He just is he says, run that business. But here's what we said. We said, we're a little concerned about the next 6 months. This was in September of 2006, because we could already see what was happening. Negative sales comparisons in the carpet business started in about August of 2006. Why? Katrina happened in August of 2005. And there was a run on everything that was petrochemically based, including carpet. We sold 197 million yards in the third quarter of 2005. And if you took that and annualized that, you see that's 800 million rate of. So we could see what was happening was the comparisons were starting to go negative, and we were like the new kids on the block. Oh my God, here Bob, he didn't pick the year, he didn't pick the month, he picked the day to leave. From the standpoint of what was happening, and he didn't really do it that way. He needed to turn it over, as he said. But we went out, we talked to Warren. We're kind of managing expectations. Said, it might be tough. He said, he goes, don't think about the next 6 months. It might be tough for 2 years. Well, 2 years later, and it's been pretty darn tough, and I think it's going to be even tougher still. But here's what he said. He said, I want y'all to manage this business like it's the only asset your family will ever own, and you're going to have to own it for the rest of your life. And I mean, I tell you, that is empowering and rare. And I think it affords us some opportunities that I clearly would tell you, having been a public company and a public company CFO for years, that's not the way you think about necessarily things as a public company. But it was a beautiful thing when Warren told us that. How am I doing on time? Okay, good. So that's wonderful to have a guy that owns your business and understands the business cycle. Today I'm afraid most people, particularly, and I saw this all the time when we go call on the, quote, wrong guys, as Bob would say, the buy-side analysts for, these Fidelity. A guy's been out of school for 2 years, thinks he knows something, knows how to run a computer, doesn't know a damn thing about running a business. So, but Warren does, and Warren's been through a number of cycles over his career, and I think when he gives you that kind of guidance, it allows you to do things what I would call the right way. But one of the things you clearly have to do in this kind of environment is you have to manage for cash flow. You just have to. And managing for cash flow in our business is principally you've got to manage your inventory. And here's the difficult thing. There's only one. It used to be back before everybody bought up and became their own fiber producer, there were fiber producers. You know some of them, DuPont, Stainmaster. And they're still out there, and they're owned by a company out in Kansas, and today they're called Invista. But Allied Signal, Honeywell, we bought that. Solutia, which was part of Monsanto, who's basically getting out of the carpet fiber business. Everybody has gone to where we all extrude our own fiber. And so here's the deal. When you're that far back in the chain, there's only one way to manage the inventory, and that is you've got to run your equipment that is in sync with what demand is. And if you recall, I said we sold 710 million square yards in 2005. Since that peak, the industry will be off 23-24% today. That, think about what that means. Basically what you have to do is you have to slow everything down. You have to go to fewer days in a week from a scheduling standpoint. You have to rationalize and get your capacities to fit what your demand is. And in some cases, and that's been the case for Shaw Industries, we've closed a number of spinning mills. Now, spinning mills were destined to be closed anyway, because spinning yarn from staple nylon or from any kind of staple fiber is a very expensive way to go. People don't do it that way today. Today you extrude a filament, and then once you have that filament yarn, there's only two things you have to do with it. You have to twist it together with another end, and then you heat set that, and you're ready to go. Staple yarn was, if you can imagine big what look to be big bales of cotton, and then it's carded, and it just goes through so many processes, and it's very labor intensive. You can't really do as much from a styling standpoint with it, so it was destined to go anyway. And it's certainly been the first to go because it's high cost and not good for styling. And so we've had to close a number of spinning mills during this economic downturn. But the other thing I'd say is that you really, really have to manage your inventory. And we've done a good job with that. In fact, I would tell you that last year, 2007, if we go back to 2003, and 2003 is an important year to go back to because that's when we acquired a couple other companies. We got back into the integration business. We bought Honeywell, Synthetic, and so on and so forth. So you really kind of measure things from there. 2007 was the best cash flow year of the last 5 years except for one. And that's in a period of time where our profits at Shaw from an EBIT standpoint were $560 million in 2006, $435 million in 2007. Don't know where they're going to be in 2008, but most likely probably close to half that number. But yet our cash flow in the last 2 years have been superior to any of the other years, and that's because you manage your inventory, receivables, and payables. And you have to. You balance your productive capacity against what your demand is, and you have to rationalize certain operations. I'd say the next most important thing besides managing for cash flow is you've got to communicate with all of your stakeholders, principally your employees. You have to be open and honest with them. You have to talk about important things that we're doing. You have to accentuate the positive things we're doing. We're doing a tremendous job in the carpet business today, and I think principally also at Shaw Industries in environmental and sustainability efforts. Today, when we acquired Honeywell's operations, we're able to take carpet that's type 6 nylon, a pull-up, and turn that exact piece of carpet back into another piece of carpet. No one in the industry can do that. We have an evergreen nylon recycling facility in Augusta, Georgia, on site with DSM, where we have another big fiber extrusion operation. But today we can sell carpet tile, which in commercial applications, that's what most people want. They want the tiles. We can sell that tile and tell that customer, when you're done with it, we'll come get it, and we'll deliver you a new one made from if you want it made from this one, we can do that. And that's pretty, I mean, if you think about that, that's true, what we call kind of cradle to cradle sustainability. A lot of people in the industry today, a lot of people can take these PET bottles, the polyester is what that water bottle's made from, and make that into carpet. In fact, that's what polyester staple carpet comes from in most cases. There is virgin material too, but a lot of our competitors, principally Mohawk, has a major operation recycling PET bottles. But when that carpet gets pulled up, it's either going to be downcycled into something, or more than likely it's going to a landfill. With type 6 nylon, you don't have to do that today. But communicating with all of your stakeholders is very, very positive. And as I say, you've got to accentuate the things that you're doing. We're going to spend this year in capital expenditures well over $200 million. And you might, well, what's that compared to historically? We spend over any kind of normal business cycle probably close to our depreciation and amortization, which is running about $165 million a year. This year we'll spend between 200 and 225, and next year we'll spend at that rate too. And I think what that does say to your people is that you're planning for when this economic downturn turns around, because inevitably they always do. And that's probably the other thing I would mention to you, is that you try to learn from what's gone on in previous business cycles. And we've gone back and we've looked at the ones in the early 70s. There was a major one in the early 80s when Ronald Reagan was taking over from Jimmy Carter. I can remember First Atlanta was offering 30-day CDs at 21% paying. So you remember inflation. Home mortgages at that time were somewhere between 14 I know people don't believe that, but that is what the case was. And so you try and look back and say, what does happen when you get through these periods of time? And the reality is, typically there's a lot of pent-up demand. The industry has a major bounce. Questionable this time whether that's going to be true, given the fact that there's, I'd say, a credit crisis in the mortgage business today, so we're not quite sure how the bounce will be. But I think the thing that you want to do is plan for, while you're rationalizing your operation, don't do something that's going to hurt you so that when the turnaround comes, you're prepared to take advantage of it. You clearly have to look at every expense. I mean, you do. We try and tell our people this. We need to cut the fat, and we need to make sure we don't cut any muscle or any bone. Now, with that said, I can tell you the first thing that goes down, unfortunately, is incentive compensation. You can just write it on the wall that that's going to happen. I tell people, hey, we can save it that way if we want to. That's not the way, I don't think that's the way we're going to want it, but the realities are sometimes that's what happens. But the other thing that we spend tons of money on in the carpet business is samples. Shaw Industries will spend $150 million a year sampling retail stores. And so that's an area, if you feel like demand is such that people aren't walking in today looking to buy flooring, you can reduce your sample cost, introduce fewer products, and so on and so forth. But certainly, I would tell you, in these times, you have to manage your expenses. I'd say the other thing you've got to do is you've got to seize the opportunity to be in front of customers. In 2007, we reorganized our residential sales force. We had people calling on retail stores, people calling on people that service essentially just the apartment, multifamily business, and also people who only service the builder business. And that's the way the business is. There are people in Atlanta, Georgia, that if you went to their store, the only people they serve are builders because it's highly specialized. Same with apartment replacement. There are people with computer systems that are servicing post-properties apartments. When they get a call and say, we've got a 2-bedroom at so-and-so and it's the one with the solarium room, they know exactly what material to have on hand, how it should be cut, how they're going to go in there and do that, because in the builder business, carpet's the last thing that gets done. Many houses, if you've ever been into them, you go in and they put that carpet in the day before the closing takes place. In apartments, it's, maybe not so much today because apartment demand is pretty good, but when times are tough, what do they do to get somebody to sign a 12-month lease? They say, come in, you sell one, we'll repaint it and we'll recarpet it. And boom, there they go. And they want, once they're there signing that lease, they want that done tomorrow. And so people are very specialized. And so one of the things we did was we took this period of time to more closely align our business people, our sales force, with those customer channels. And while demand's not great, that realignment puts our people out there in front of those customers more often than our competitors do. And what that's going to translate to, we believe, is that when business does bounce back, they're going to remember who it was that was with them during some of these more difficult times. And I think, and we certainly believe, that we'll be rewarded by that. So that's the thing you do. You get yourself in front of customers. You try to diversify your business as best you can. In Shaw Industries, we've talked a lot about, our business in total, but today it's about 75% residential and about 25% commercial. And while the dynamics in residential are a challenge, commercial has never been hotter. Although, I will tell you, it goes through cycles too. Its last cycle was right after the dot-com bubble burst, and it was about 2000, give you some numbers, in 2000 Shaw Industries was doing $650 million in what we call specified commercial, real commercial business. The next year in 01 it went down to 580. The next year in 02 it bottomed out at 550, and it took all the way back until 04 until we were back at 650. But today, we're on pace to do $1 billion in the commercial end of the business. So the commercial business, and that's something where carpet is not losing any share. Today, corporations still want carpet. What they want is, and I can't tell if this is tile, I think it is, they want carpet tile principally, mainly because it's easier to install. You know, at Arthur Andersen, they like to be able to say on Friday, just get everything up off the floor because we're replacing the carpet this weekend. And the only way you can do that is with carpet tile, because otherwise you have to clear a great big space to be able to lay broadloom carpet down. With tiles, they're lift systems for units and out in where the staff are and those kind of bullpens and so on and so forth. They just lift that up and they slide those tiles in, and then if someone spills coffee on one or wears, they just yank one out and put one more in. And so commercial carpet tile is growing like fire. I mean, we're up 40% this year and probably on pace to do close to $400 million in just the carpet tile business. So the other thing I'd say is when you're managing in this kind of business, you don't lose market share. And the carpet industry, as I said, is highly consolidated. There are not a lot of secrets out there, and customers will tell you that so-and-so's doing one thing, and sometimes you have to put, we say, cotton in your ears, particularly during times like these where we've seen our raw materials go up in 2008 as compared to the same period in 2007 at a pace of $385 million. Now remember, I said we made $435 million in EBIT earnings last year, and our costs are up $385 million. There's only one way to deal with that, and that's try and pass that on. And it's difficult in this kind of economic environment to raise prices, but I don't think we look at we sit around all the time. We don't have a choice, and we'll see what happens. You never get enough, and you never get it quick enough. But we really don't have any other choice but to try and raise prices. But I do think that you can diversify your business. As I said, realign your sales force to be closer to customers, and look for every opportunity out there. And so that's kind of what we do today. You got to recognize your people as an important asset. Now, one of the good things about not being a public company is our incentive plans, at least our long-term incentive plan, which we use, is called phantom stock. And phantom stock, the way ours works is it goes up based on what our earnings are on a book value basis. And we use the same number of shares we had outstanding when Warren Buffett bought the company. But here's the point. When we make money, what our deferred compensation is invested in is this phantom stock. So as long as we make money, the value of that phantom stock goes up. And over the last, since 2001, going through the end of 2008, our phantom stock has compounded at a growth rate of almost 9%. Now, that's not a runaway rate of return, but let me tell you what happens to you if you're a public company in today's environment in anything related to the housing industry. It doesn't matter how much money you're going to make. Your stock is worth a hell of a lot less today than it was at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of last year. And that's just the way stock options work. And we've been there. We've done that before. And inevitably it'll hit a point, and if you happen to be issued at today's prices, those will be in the money at some point in the near future, you would expect. But our model is such that as long as we're making money, what we've got our investments in our phantom stock at Shaw Industries is going up in value, and that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. I'm going to break here and take some questions, but I want to tell you, I thought about two things. What have I learned? This is my first cycle. And Arthur Andersen didn't have any cycles. Man, that business, all we needed was the law to change, and we could just, this IFRS or whatever, that's going to be a fantastic thing for the accounting industry. I'm positive of it. Because we just didn't have recessions. I guess parts of it did. If you were in the M&A business in these accounting firms, you could see a little bit of blip when you don't have a credit market there to support that. But in the tax business, man, we were just all the time. We have raised our billing rates. You know, it's a great business model to be in. So I've never seen one. I started in 1996, and I'm telling you, I had no idea how fantastic 2005 and 2006 were. It's only when looking back that you see how high that peak was. Warren always says it's only when the tide goes out that you find out who was really swimming naked, and that's a lot. That's a lot of truth to that. He's a wise sage, I'm telling you. But the one thing I've learned is communication is very important. Cycles, you go through them, inevitably you will come out of them. But I'll tell you the most important thing I've learned. You don't make as much money when times are good as you should, because it's amazing how hard we work today for what our results are. And when I think about how when times are good, some things aren't being looked at that hard. So here's the key. I mean, the real question is, when things turn around, you know, will we still have the same discipline that we've employed to get us to where we are today? Because this is important. 10% sales reduction is not a 10% loss in profitability. It's a lot more than that, particularly when you're deeply, deeply backward integrated. But also, this must be true. When things go back up by 10%, we've got to see 30 or 40% hit the bottom line as opposed to just 10%. And the way to make that happen is to have the same discipline when things get good as you do when things are tough. And I will tell you, though, my observation is most companies don't do it that way. Things are good, hey, everybody's happy, and sometimes you need to be unhappy, and even when times are good. But at any rate, that's, as I say, there is no silver bullet for managing in an economic downturn. You do have to pay attention to some things. You have, particularly in a big business like ours with a lot of people and a lot of operations around the state and around this whole region. It just is hard work. It's just flat out, hard work and staying positive. I mean, really staying positive is important. Anyway, I'd love to have questions from anyone.
As you're thinking about those first questions, let me say we've got a couple people with microphones, so if you'll raise your hand, we'll get a microphone over to you. We are recording this, and so not only will talking into the microphone help other people in the room hear you, but it'll get your question on the recording as well. So, some questions.
Hi, I'm just wondering what you're saying to the current economic environment and real estate, and you're starting to see a bottom or anything there?
Well, we chart a lot of things in the real estate business. One of the most important things we think is month's supply of homes for sale. And we've not seen that give any indication yet that that's moving in the right direction. I mean, historically, that metric is probably somewhere between 4 to 6 months of available inventory for sale, and today it's a lot closer to 2x that, more like 11 to 12. And this thing's been real uneven. There's some markets that are off 60%. If you go to California, if you go to Nevada, you go to Arizona, and if you're in Florida, some of those markets are off way more than like in Atlanta or Charlotte. But honestly, we're not really seeing anything happen. And I think part of the reason that that's true is because, as I said, we've been in this for 2 years already. And we're one of the first ones to go in. We'll be one of the first ones to come out. I think this whole credit, the subprime mortgage, all that's going on with financial institutions today is going to hamper the timing on the recovery. And so we really, I think we believe that this year is the year that the bottom will be found. But I'm not sure that we would say that we think there is a major improvement coming If so, it might happen in the second half of 2009. You'll get some positive comparisons, but comparisons are, they're for people on Wall Street, I think, sometimes who like to say what's happening. You really got to look at, forget about how it compares. What is the real level of business activity in your business? That's what affects what's going on in your business more so than how it might compare to a previous period. And we haven't really seen it any yet, but we have, it's kind of been bouncing along at the same level. We see a little bit of spike in demand sometimes if we're raising prices, but that's usually just advanced buying. That comes right out of the next month's sales. And I think the other thing we'd say, though we haven't seen it yet, is that we believe that the commercial end of the business, and that's going to be driven by CEO confidence, that's going to be driven by a lot of different things, that's probably getting close to a peak. It's been great for the last 4 years or so, but that's probably not sustainable. So probably about the time the residential market picks up, that's about when the commercial will go down. We always say we've never seen it operate on all 8 cylinders. We hope someday we do, but invariably it seems like if residential's up, commercial is turning down. Just one time, I want to see them both moving up in the same time in the same direction.
How has the emergence of the Chinese been affecting you guys, or do you expect it to affect you more in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. China, as I talked about, the service model in the carpet business is such that I think it's, you never ignore something that big and that important. But given the fact that most people buy carpet off the samples, and you think about the inventories and all, I didn't mention how many stock keeping units we carry. It's 25,000 stock keeping units defined to be a color of a particular style. And I just don't think the service model is such that you could ever reach the United States from China and service the business in any way. I don't think it'd be feasible to even try. Now, they are a factor in hard surface. A lot of hardwood today is imported from China. There's been a lot of controversy over that, a lot of illegal logging, and our government is taking some actions to make sure that they don't allow the industry here to become uncompetitive to the Chinese. And then they floated the yuan. They've taken some support, some incentives off of some of the manufacturers, but they're a factor more in hard surface. Clearly, when you talk about the rug business, now that's a different business in that that's made, put in a box, and shipped on a carton and hits the United States. Most rugs today are sold primarily through the mass merchant and home center channels. So you're talking about Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Lowe's, that business. Clearly, India, China, countries like that have made a major inroad into the rug business, and they're a player in laminate flooring. They're a player in hardwood flooring, although less so, and I think probably in the future less so than they are even today. But we keep our eye on them. But the other thing too is all the manufacturers here, as I mentioned, are so far backward integrated with a cost position. And the other thing is the product itself is not that labor intensive. Carpet today is probably no more than 15% labor. And so if you think about their advantage, which is in labor, versus a product cost that's no more than 15% labor, the service model, and then the freight to get it from there to here and all the inventories and all, I just don't, as I say, we'll never not watch them, but I don't think they're a threat like they were in the garment industry in the southeastern United States, which started in the northeast, moved to the southeast because of labor rates, non-unions, and so on and so forth, but then ultimately went to Mexico, and even the Mexican labor rates were uncompetitive as it relates to China. That's not, I can't really fathom that happening to the carpet business. Yes.
You mentioned there's four companies that have 85% share. Do you feel like you're positioned better or worse than them? Or is there any risk that those other three companies, any of them might go out of business or something as times get bad?
Yeah, great question. And you're right. I mean, when times get tough, it gets real tough. No, I think our major competitor, Mohawk, is a great company. They're huge, and their model is different than ours in that they're much larger in a lot of the hard surface categories, principally laminate, and then they bought Downturn, which is the leading domestic company in ceramic and porcelain tile. They're not going anywhere. Some of the other ones, though, it could be tough. There could be, and it wouldn't shock me if there's another round of consolidation. Now, the issue is you're getting to a point where it's pretty highly consolidated, and so you've got to wonder about Hart-Scott-Rodino and whether or not you could, the Department of Justice and so on and so forth, whether you could have one more merger or two. Clearly you could in the commercial end, because we're the leading market share company in commercial, and we have about 25% share. And there's some big companies in the state, which we didn't mention, Interface being one of them down in LaGrange, and they also have operations here in Atlanta. Big commercial business, about $1 billion worth there. So I think that there's a chance that there'll be more consolidation, because during these kinds of periods of time, the smaller guys that don't have the cost advantage that a Shaw or a Mohawk does are really hard pressed. And sometimes you get into these environments and they say it's time to just give up the ghost and quit fighting the fight. So it's possible.
I think we got time for one more question.
Okay. Yes, sir.
You got a bank. This is not a question, it's just a comment. I've spent my career with the Coca-Cola Company for 61 years, and your comments about Warren Buffett were very interesting. I've often wondered, how did he become involved in so many businesses if he attempted to run them? In the Coca-Cola business, he doesn't own the business,
Right.
but he's the largest shareholder. And he served on the board of directors for some years. I don't know whether he's still there or not. But when the sale of Gatorade came up, it was voted on in the board of directors, and I was told it was his vote that caused Coca-Cola not to buy Gatorade and permitted Pepsi-Cola to buy it. And in the soft drink business, in my judgment, share of market is an indication of success as much as the profit and loss statement.
Mm-hmm.
And I was disappointed that the Coca-Cola Company permitted its competitor to take over that share of market. I also understand that he made the comment when he voted against it that the Coca-Cola Company would be better advised to invest that amount of money in China. I don't know whether they did that or not, because I've been retired for a long time.
Well, Warren Buffett, he says it very well. He buys, he's moved from more buying stocks like Gillette, which is now Procter & Gamble, and Coca-Cola, and so on and so forth, to really buying entire companies for a couple of different reasons, one of which is once you get over a certain amount of ownership, there's a reporting threshold, and as soon as, if he's trying to take a position and then it gets reported, then it can run away from him from a pricing standpoint. Warren, make no mistake, he spends 90% of his day reading. He says there's no substitute for reading primary source materials, 10Ks and 10Qs, if you can imagine. He reads 5 newspapers a day. The other 10% of his day, he says he waits for the phone to ring. And Warren is a value guy, and he does very well in the times like these. But the thing he tells you when you're looking to maybe sell your company to Warren Buffett is, one, we only have 17 people here in Omaha. We can't manage and run anything. That'd be number one. And then that's why we bought you, because we think you can. And then the other thing is that he kind of relates it to a picture that says, if we buy your business it's going to have its own wing in the Metropolitan Museum in New York City. And we're going to preserve that business. He's never sold any business he's ever bought, ever. And made a few, as he would say, he's made a few errors, but he's never sold a business that he's ever purchased. And he's in it for the long haul. And a lot of other buyers out there, I can tell you, because we see them all the time, because sometimes when we're trying to buy a business, it's owned by one of those people who bought it 4 or 5 years ago, put $10 million of equity in it, borrowed 50, and think that they have something they paid $60 million for that 2 years later is worth $180 million. So we run into those people a lot. As he says, they put it in the window, try to dress her up a little bit, and hope the next guy that comes by takes a fancy to her and wants to buy that. And that's not at all the way Warren Buffett runs or acquires businesses or allows them to operate. And I think that he believes, I believe, that makes him a buyer of choice in the right environment. And a lot of the times, that businesses he's bought, entire businesses, it's founders who have this desire to know that their company is going to endure. Dalton, Georgia, Shaw Industries is so important to Dalton, Georgia. I can't overemphasize how important we are in that community in terms of employment, giving back to the community. Everything goes in Dalton as Shaw Industries go. So, you know, it's important that we continue in the way that we're operated today for that community. And the other thing that he has available to him to buy other businesses is about $40 billion, and that, you know, can fluctuate from time to time. That's generated principally by the insurance business. So he and he's just a wonderfully interesting guy. Just he's been I count myself very fortunate to be able to say that I have one quick story, and then I know we need to get out. At our first meeting with Warren, he takes us down to the car, and we're going to go to lunch at his favorite place called Garatz. And I hadn't really said a lot during the meeting. Vance was kind of carrying the ball. We would chime in from time to time. So we go to the lunch place. I mean, he just drives up there like anybody, walks in, you know, we sit back in this table. It's just, you know, I know everybody's picture is Bank of America, private dining room, you know. No, that is not Warren. So anyway, we go in there, and they come to me first, and I think I ordered a roast beef and gravy open-faced sandwich. And I ordered first. They go to Warren, he goes, I'll have what he's having. I thought, man, am I smart. So anyway, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ken, for sharing your experiences and observations with us, your thoughts. On behalf of the Terry College, I want to present you with this sculpture by local artist Paul Benzunas. Thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you.
And for everyone else, we are adjourned. As you're leaving the parking deck, please just tell the attendant that you're at Terry Third Thursday, and that'll be your ticket out of here. So, see you next month.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate it. This thing